In 1983, after a major event in New York City, I called a few people to get their reactions. Here's what I heard from Andy Warhol.
It was the most exciting thing in my whole life.
And here's what I heard from Steve Rubell, who was famous for his Studio 54 nightclub.
It was almost like the A-bomb hit.
And this was the reaction from the humorist Fran Lebowitz.
I had no intention of dying for this cause. It looked too dangerous.
But if you really want to know what happened when hundreds of thousands of people converged in Central Park, you gotta hear it from the three of us who covered that event for People magazine. And then we'll explain how a year later, at 1:30 in the morning, we ended up dancing with the superstar who caused all the hoopla. So, keep listening.
I couldn't throw it out. I had to scream and shout. Before I turn to dust, I've got to throw it out. Before I turn to...
Hello, Sally Libby.
Hello, Michael Small.
Well, today I have arranged to present you with two extremely special people.
Can't wait.
The three of us were reporters for People magazine. I shared with these two people some relatively close encounters in 1983 and 1984 with the one and only Diana Ross. You're into her, right, Sally?
So into her. I wanted to be her back in 1977 after seeing her at a concert in Boston. Loved her.
Well, good luck with that. We are going to revisit those Diana Ross moments today, but before we do, I want to mention that you, Sally, crossed paths with these people way back then also.
Yes.
So let's start with the standard reunion ceremony. Sally, I give you the one and only Alan Carter, also known as Alain Cartier.
Hi, Alan.
Hello, Sally. Good to see you again.
You too.
Welcome, Alan. Along with Alan, we have the inimitable Lisa Russell, also known as all kinds of other things.
Hello.
Hi, Lisa.
Lisa, you're still working for People, aren't you?
I don't work for the magazine directly. Within the company, there's a little division of old geezers from all the old magazines, and we put out what are called bookazines. So I'm actually sort of on deadline today.
Okay, well, we'll talk fast. Alan, you had a career in television, I believe. Were you on TV or were you behind the scenes?
Well, I was both. If you blinked, you missed me on television. In fact, some of my claims to fame include being an extra on As the World Turns, working with Julianne Moore before she was famous.
Wow.
Ooh.
For the last couple of years, I've been sort of behind the scenes working in local news, which isn't really news. Car crash of the day. So I've been doing that. Websites, magazines, radio, you name it, I've done it. Jack of all trades, master of none.
The way this began is that I found two folders in the boxes of everything I've saved. There were two separate Diana Ross events. All three of us covered both of them. We're going to remember those events and decide, can I throw out the contents of these folders, or should they be saved for the sake of history? I think the only place we can start is to wallow a little bit in Diana mania. What highlights from Diana's career do you guys remember? Lisa, what about you? Any songs you loved?
I suppose if I had to choose favorites, it would be the early Motown stuff. Frankly, her later stuff, I could take or leave. But, the old Motown stuff, when that comes on, who can resist that?
And Alan, what about you?
Well, a little black kid growing up in Queens, New York, who had no idea about celebrity, who just watched TV and went, I'd like to do that someday. Of course, when the family would gather to watch her or the Supremes on like Ed Sullivan or a show like that, that was appointment television. I mean, we just would all, gather together and, get the bag of chips and we just sit there. I've been a fan for 50 years, probably.
Yay.
Let's hear it for that. Sally, what do you have to throw into the memories of Diana?
I think she had 6 number 1 hits, but all of those songs, prolific.
Pop, rock, R&B, soul.
I think we should say that she is 80 now.
No, 79. Her birthday's in March. And the amazing thing is, she was on tour this year at age 79. She even played Radio City Music Hall, which is very relevant to what we're going to talk about today. Anything else, Sally, you want to throw out there?
Very recently, Smokey Robinson just came out and told the tale of an affair with her while he was married. Lasted a year.
Yeah. She was very young when she had that affair with him. I think she was maybe only 20. Did you guys hear about that? Did you know about that?
I did not.
I did not.
Sally's a source of salacious gossip, and the three of us worked at People magazine. How does that make sense?
Really? Thanks a lot, Sally. Back then, even now, there's so many affairs and they hated each other and they fought backstage. And the one thing Berry Gordy taught everybody was when you go out on that stage, you have to comport yourself in a certain way. I mean, now we know when people are fighting and we know the gossip and we know all that stuff. They hid affairs. If they hated each other's guts, you wouldn't know it. I think that's why Dreamgirls was so fascinating, because it really was sort of the behind the scenes of what was really going on.
I looked around and found Diana Ross quotes. There were some on her website, and I thought Alan might find this interesting that one of her quotes from March 2022 was, "My best morning and night mindful meditation is hand washing the dishes." Are you skeptical?
Diana Ross doesn't do her own dishes.
Another quote that she had, she said, "Criticism, even when you try to ignore it, can hurt. Bear that in mind, Mr. Carter." And she said, "I have cried over many articles written about me, but I move on and I don't hold on to that." I don't know if there are people here who are guilty of making her cry, but the three of us did contribute to a People magazine cover story about Diana, and some people felt it was a little too mean. It was about a very memorable concert. And Lisa, the date of that event was?
July 21st, 1983.
Diana was 39 years old at the time, which seemed like an old lady to me then. Now 39 is a very young child to me. She decided to perform this concert in New York City's Central Park, and it was a big deal. She called it For One and For All. That was the name of the concert. The set was designed by Tony Walton. It had colored sails and flags and kites, and it took 6 days to build the set. There were 140 speakers in the sound system, 20 miles of cable. There were 275 stagehands and a 16-piece band. So this was not a small endeavor. And something that was rare at the time, there were these 32-foot TV screens, which blew our minds.
Now everybody has one.
Yeah.
Her production company supposedly spent $800,000, in cost. And then she received money for selling the rights, which might have been as much as $2 million. And then she used some of the profits to build a playground in Central Park, which was not cheap. It was like $650,000. It was a very expensive event. To give you a sense of how huge an event this was, to remind you, the official estimate was that the crowd included 350,000 people.
When they said 350,000, I thought that was low. I passed that many on the subway.
I think they raised it later. Now the consensus seems to be 500,000.
I'm thinking about the population of the concert goers in terms of race.
I wasn't looking to count. I mean, even back then, it was kind of like she was known for being a crossover artist. She was one of the first crossover artists. Her crossover from almost day one was white audiences, obviously adored by Black people, and gay people took to her pretty fast too. She started in the late 60s where she knew that she had gay fans and she played up to it. A lot of the songs were, wink, wink about men and affairs and things she was doing and being your own person and standing up for what's right and, standing up for your own freedom and your own right. And that stuff translates to the gay audience like nobody's business. You don't have to stand up and say, "I'm a gay icon." You say the right words and you're going to get a gay following. And she did. And she capitalized on it. So I'd have to say that night, it was a sea of white, Black.
It was a sea of everybody.
Yeah.
But in New York, it's always a sea of everybody. So, Sally, I would say it wasn't remarkable.
Oh, I would actually disagree with that. It was a much more mixed crowd than, for instance, the perhaps even more well-remembered Simon and Garfunkel concert in the park. And that had been in, I think 81. And I was there. That was an overwhelmingly white audience.
Interesting. Okay.
Of the ones that had come before, Elton John had done one. This was the first one where a good percentage of the audience was Black.
Yeah, I think Lisa's right. New York could be relatively segregated in its way, but that concert, and again, this is something that the Black gay guy observed pretty much immediately. Oh, look, there's some of my people over there. Oh, there's some of my people over there. Oh, those are my people and my people. And I didn't go to a lot of places back then feeling like it was a mixed crowd. And then you had people who knew her from 80 on, and then you had the people who knew her from the 60s on. So the crowd had 40-year-olds, the crowd had 20-year-olds.
So this major event started with a press conference and you covered it, right, Alan?
Yeah.
Did you hear anything interesting?
At that press conference, she had just come out a little late and she said, I was having lunch. So, of course, I, being the person I am, said, you're so thin. Like, you actually eat lunch? And this, I'm not making this up. I'm kind of almost wishing she hadn't said it. She said, I get a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich, but I take just one bite. And I thought, wow, like, I wish I could do that.
Was that your only question, or did you ask her something else?
I did ask a couple of questions at the press conference where later on her people kind of came over and said, I'll clean up the language. But it was like, was the point of this to ask really hard questions? And I said, look, she's been in the public eye for 25 years, and I don't think people know the real her. And there's all this stuff about how she's, mean and she's a diva. And she sat there so sweet and so nice. Kind of thinking like, which is the real you? Because this is somebody who I don't think the public knows. And I thought if I threw a couple of questions at her that I thought would rattle her, and she couldn't have handled them any better or nicer. So,
do you remember what tough questions you asked her?
Well, I specifically was sort of weirded out by looking at the playlist, and she was going to sing something from Dreamgirls. And if you remember back at that point, she had been about a year and a half bad-mouthing the show, saying it was a rip-off of her life, and she couldn't believe they would rip off her life, and she thought it was horrible they ripped off her life. Rip off, rip off, rip off. But she's singing a song from the show, a very famous song from the show, in her set. So I say, excuse me, Diana, I have to ask, have you seen Dreamgirls? Have you kind of come to make amends with the show? No. And I said, then of all the songs you could sing, and you have like 42 million songs, why would you sing a song from the show? Quote, I have friends in that show. And I just thought, I'm not getting anywhere with this question. So just moving on. But it just was weird to me. Like, then I realized, Michael, she was a master of publicity and a master of communication. She knew someone would ask and got some more controversy going about the show. And for that, I thought, well, that was brilliant. And I literally remember thinking, I love this woman. She's that good and that smart that she could sort of whip it around.
Wow. Do you remember any other questions you asked?
I think I asked her, like, what song she was really tired of singing. And she said, there's no song I'm tired of singing. I love everything. And at that point, she was doing a lot of the, I love life, I love love, I love everybody, She didn't have a negative thing to say, period, about anything.
Lisa, do you remember being at that press conference?
No. Was I there, Alan? I don't think so.
I don't believe you were. You two did the work. I literally went to the parties and the press conferences. I didn't really go to take notes. I went as sort of a fan. Shouldn't say that too loud.
So the most famous thing about this concert turned out to be the weather, like the most horrible rainstorm that many people had ever seen. And Lisa, during all that drama, you were there in the press area, were you not?
Yes, and I remember the rain, of course. About 20 minutes into the show, the skies just opened up, like not-so rain. It was also blowing. It was like horizontal rain. So finally, it was Parks Commission and cops who said, we got to shut this down because this is now dangerous. And so she said the concert's going to have to end. And she stayed on stage while saying, like, okay, music's over, but everybody has to split. There was lightning out there too. And meanwhile, we're all standing there on metal chairs. So, so yeah, I mean, we stayed around just because, that was the story. I do remember standing on this chair. I had taken off my red stilettos and I was wearing a white mini skirt with black polka dots. A journalist who had been behind me told me in the rain had become completely translucent.
Oh.
Which I, of course, hadn't noticed. And I ended up dating him, actually. So I don't know if the translucent skirt had anything to do with that.
And Lisa, by the way, this shows you what a big Diana Ross fan I am. She was soaking wet, and I kept thinking, my God, she's gorgeous, even soaking wet. And I love you, I love you a lot, but didn't notice your translucent skirt.
Alan, did you see any celebrities there?
I don't remember any celebrities there. I remember just feeling from just the time we walked in, I don't know why, just like dread. And I know that's weird because I was excited to see her, but just feeling like, I don't know if I trust 500,000 New Yorkers in one place all at once. I'm looking up going, that looks like a rain cloud. Oh, I hope it does. Oh, no. And then you start feeling drops. I remember just turning to Lisa and going, I think it's raining. And she's looking at me like, oh, are you going to like be the damper of this evening? Like, here you go, and then she feels a couple. And I remember you go, yeah, you're right. It's raining. And boosh, like the skies opened up. And it was just like, wow, this is not good.
And there had been a terrible drought for like 10 days before this happened. So the ground was packed, solid, dry. And then the rain hit it. And that's why the mud, it was like Woodstock. People were like rolling in the mud. And the winds were supposedly up to 59 miles per hour.
Yeah, it was horizontal rain. Like, wow, this isn't even coming down straight. It's coming sideways. And I remember she had was it like an orangey red kind of a jumpsuit on? That was clinging and her hair was clinging. And she just kept saying, I'm beautiful. I've taken a long time to get here. I'm not going anywhere. And we're like, I see lightning about to hit the stage. We're getting out of here. I would have stayed. But yeah, like Lisa said, they were like, we got to stop. We got to close this down.
Yeah, I was out with the regular people. It was just scary and a mess. And it was impressive to see her keep going out there. But it was also maybe there were questions about whether it was kind of foolish, like it was dangerous for her to be out there with the lightning.
But she was telling people to go, right?
She was telling people to go, but she stayed, which was a good thing, I guess, for her to do. But now, did either of you go to the party afterwards?
No.
There was a party. She stayed till midnight, and she had to watch a tape of the fiasco. I think it's just worth noting, like, what Diana went through. I mean, this was a big deal for her. She invested a lot of money. The next day, I called people who were there. The first person I called was Andy Warhol. And whenever I interviewed him, which was pretty often, he always told me that everything was great and wonderful, and you'll hear that here too. But then he'd slip in a little something interesting, like the fact that the interview he did with Richard Gere for Interview magazine didn't go well and had to be redone. Anyway, I know that 2 minutes of chit-chat may seem long and the audio isn't great, but come on, it's Andy Warhol. So here's what Andy thought of the concert.
It was the most exciting thing in my whole life. We stayed till the end. We loved it.
Were you under the tent in the end?
No, I stayed up on the bleachers where all the VIPs left. I was the last one on there with Rob Lowe, that movie star.
I was trying to figure out who else I should call for comments. Like,
Richard Gere was there, and Susan Sarandon, and
God, I don't know how Richard Gere got in without having the whole place go crazy.
Oh, I know. He wore his normal clothes. I mean, I had a big thing about him because we're doing it for the cover, and he's going to give us another interview because he gave us a hard time.
Oh. Well, also, I guess can you give me some sort of quote about her performance?
Well, I don't know. It's one of those lifetime things, when they do her biography, and you could just see it in a big movie.
I left feeling really sad because I just felt like
we had the best time. We really did because we couldn't get out of 81st Street. We followed all this crowd. We ended up down on 72nd Street, and then we went to Cafe Central and really had a good time. And then went back to the party. You didn't go to the party?
No, was the party at Gulf and Western?
Yeah, it was really great. She was there. It was exciting, and they played the same tape again. It's different on tape.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded, like a real show.
Who gave the party? Do you know?
I guess it was Paramount. It was in the restaurant up on the top of the park.
Did that go pretty late at night?
Yeah.
Was she there late at night?
Yeah, she was great, yeah.
I was afraid that she was just going to go backstage and cry and
Oh, no, she was very, she looked great. So she was terrific, God. Wasn't that magic?
And that's when I was getting other calls, so I hung up on Andy Warhol.
Michael, think of it this way. You got the chance to tell Andy Warhol your 15 minutes are up.
Yay, I love that.
The next call I got was from Steve Rubell. Andy told me that Steve helped organize the party after the concert, which is interesting considering that Steve was in prison 2 years earlier. He had a little problem with tax evasion at that very famous nightclub he ran called Studio 54. Anyway, here's a little of what he told me.
Did you get totally drenched?
So drenched, I took off all my shirt and everything.
When you were trying to leave the park, did you go through any incidents?
It was amazing because people were helping each other. We were running through the park, and one kid fell, and everybody stopped and picked up the kid, a little kid. You know, considering it was almost like the A-bomb hit, you know, the people happened to have been very, very nice.
Did Diana say anything to you that you remember, or did she seem pretty upset?
I love her. She's a good friend, so I have to preface everything I tell you with her spontaneous concern about everyone's welfare, you know, and was unbelievable. Lightning was going right around, but they had to switch microphones to take away the electric microphone. She's standing out there. I don't know any other superstar in the world who would have done that. It's a moment that I'll never forget.
I wonder if she was in danger. I mean,
of course she was in danger. It was lightning all around. She was such a trooper. I mean, she would just say, okay, she'd sing a couple of lines, and then she'd say, you know, move out to your left, and if people were moving too fast, she'd come on, don't run, everybody take their time, it's only rain, and then she'd sing a couple of lines of a song. I don't know if everyone realized that she wasn't singing really whole songs at that point. You know, she stayed backstage. She stayed back in the van back there. I was home an hour, and she was still backstage. You know, because she just kept wanting to know that everybody got out of the park. She's really that nice. People pick on her all the time, saying, you know, she left the people behind. You know what I mean? She certainly didn't leave the people behind last night.
So then I also called Fran Lebowitz. Do you guys remember who she is?
Of course.
She was on Letterman 100 times and wore the same shirt every time she went on.
Very famous for enjoying smoking and for not working on her writing. She kind of made an image for herself as a skeptical New Yorker, or maybe acerbic is the right word, or sardonic. Anyway, she lived up to all those words when she talked with me about the concert. Definitely a different angle from Steve Rubell. So I'm going to share a little bit of that with you now.
What did you think of the way she handled the whole situation?
What do you want me to say? What a trooper, what a pro. I think that people like Diana Ross, you know, I mean, people who are very big stars in show business, get enormous credit for doing what everyone else does anyway. What about the 500,000 people who sat there in the rain and listened to her, who had less to lose? What else could she have done? You know, I'm sorry, I can't join in the worshiping of this. I don't think she behaved badly. I'm not criticizing her. I thought she behaved well in terms of calming the crowd down. I do think that once it started lightning and she was standing there holding that microphone, that she was really reckless. I mean, just because I felt she was really a lightning target. That's why she asked for the cordless knife, I'm sure. So I feel that the reaction to her is just a typical sentimental show business reaction. You know, it just was tailor-made. Get her off the stage. You never would have been able to get her off the stage. In a million years, they wouldn't be able to get her off the stage. You have to stand there. If 500,000 people would come and see you, wouldn't you stand there? So you get wet.
Yeah.
I got wet and I couldn't get 500,000 people in the park.
Now, I noticed that you definitely stayed very late and got very wet.
I left at the first drop of rain, and then I couldn't get out. I was in the tent because I had no intention of dying for this cause. It looked too dangerous. Actually, at one point when I was standing under that tent, I asked Calvin Klein if he could fake a heart attack because I thought an ambulance would come. Because the ambulance came, one of the guys who worked on the crew got hit in the head by a light. I said, Calvin, this is the way out. Fall on the ground, an ambulance will come, I'll jump in the back and we'll get out.
Are you going back tonight?
No, as Voltaire said, once a philosopher, twice a pervert.
Man, she is so funny. I love that quote from Voltaire. Once a philosopher, twice a pervert. Lisa, that sounds like something I'd hear from you.
I believe I had to go to the second show because, you know, we were doing a story on it. So, you know, Fran didn't have to go, but I did. Diana was doing her job. I was doing my job.
Alan, did you agree with Fran or did you feel sorry for Diana Ross?
I remember feeling the first night in the rain, like, is she crying or is that the rain? And I couldn't tell. And I just remember my heart going out to her because, look, I was a fan and I'm trying to be an objective journalist and just watching and a fan sitting there watching. But I just remember thinking like, wow, all that planning and all that money and, you know, trying to do something good for the city. And this is just a disaster. But you know what? It's 40 years later and we're still talking about it. So, you know, in terms of a master stroke of marketing and genius and publicity and getting your name out there, how many other people are we talking about 40 years after the fact, after a concert?
That's true. Then the next morning, she was saying that she needed to do the concert again, which is ultimately what happened. But to get to that point, 500 people worked all night long to clean the park up enough so that they could have a concert the next day.
Was the next day sunny?
Yeah, the next night was fine.
But there was something else that went wrong that night. I don't totally get why it happened, but I think this is where something called wilding was invented.
That is correct.
I was out in the audience, and what I experienced is that groups of kids would come running at us, and then they would turn and they'd run away, and everybody would get scared, and then everybody would run. And this whole huge crowd of people would run. Then they go, oh, it's okay. And we'd go back, and then you'd see everybody running towards you. So then you'd run too, and then you'd go back. That's what wilding was.
The park had a reputation, obviously, of being, dangerous. That didn't help. And I don't know, race aside, people see a large group of Black kids running at them, and they think immediately something's wrong. And I think that just sort of perpetuated itself, started like working on itself to make it even worse. And then there were people who were obviously grabbing chains and things, and then that became more violent. The first night with the rain, I'm picturing people just soaking wet. And the night with the wilding, I picture Michael wetting his pants.
Yes, you got it right, Alan. I wasn't the most experienced city kid. And, hundreds of people would be running at me. And I'd be like, oh, my God, I'm here with my notepad trying to write down what they're wearing as they run at me or whatever. It was scary. I looked up some of the statistics. They had 1,000 policemen and 400 guardian angels, if you remember the guardian angels.
Oh, yes. They dressed in red, didn't they?
They were red berets, and they were trying to keep the peace. But according to what I think we put in People magazine, there were 171 reports of violence, 84 arrests, 5 stabbings, and 3 babies were born during the concert.
And it wasn't even Labor Day.
Oh, Sally.
When you think about it now and you think, and this is going to sound very stupid, but in hindsight, 40 years later, there were only 5 stabbings. Now that's where we've come as a culture, where at a concert that size, like there'd be death, 40 stabbings, a shooting. Like that's where we've come. That only 5 stabbings. Wow, us.
Well, now that we've relived the ups and downs of that event, we get to another one. It was a little more than a year later, in October of 1984, a Diana Ross concert at Radio City Music Hall. It was supposed to be an event that would have no problems and be a big deal, and we were covering it yet again. I was at the concert because I found my notes where I, in detail, was scribbling down, now she's wearing this, now she's wearing that, now she's wearing this. So clearly I was there. I don't remember it that clearly, except that I remember a piano rose out of the stage, and there was a guy who was in jeans and a T-shirt. I think she said to him, this is my big event, why are you so dressed down? And he said, because that's the way I dress when I make music. And so she ripped off her gown, and she was wearing jeans and a T-shirt underneath, and stood by the piano and sang some songs. Were either of you there with me?
I was there with you. I think I sat next to Lisa again.
Was I there?
Lisa is too humble to remember this, but she was like the big music person at the magazine. And I was always her plus one, or always sort of tagging along as, can I come? Can I come?
Fun.
I wasn't working it, but I was there. I remember it vividly.
Did I tell that story right?
Yeah. You told it absolutely right. But from what I remember from this show, because I would love to hear her sing for 5 hours. And she did, I want to say it was an hour and maybe a few minutes. It wasn't even long. And she kept saying every 5 minutes, I can't hear, my sound is bad. My sound.
Right.
And I'm thinking, you're at Radio City. It's like one of the biggest venues in the world. And she's having sound problems. And she literally like ended the concert early because she was tired of like having problems with her sound. And I remember thinking like, I didn't pay for this. If I paid for this and people were paying hundreds of dollars and you did an hour, get back out there. What are you doing?
It's interesting. Of the three of us, Lisa doesn't remember being there. Alan remembers it vividly. And I took a lot of notes. And that sums up the three of us perfectly.
In my defense, I covered music for a long time, and I went to so many shows that they all, at some point start to merge into one. I don't remember the piano coming up from the floor of Radio City, which frankly, that's sort of a cliche move. But when you were mentioning the stripping down to jeans, and I think it was a tank top now that I recall, but I do somehow remember that thinking, oh, this is cheesy as hell.
There was a party afterwards at the USS Intrepid, which is a World War II aircraft carrier that is 893 feet long which is the length of 3 football fields. So you're picking a big venue to have a party. I would like to say that I have the press release from Bobby Zarum about the event. He was a publicist at the time. I held on to it.
Why do you have that?
Why does he have anything?
On this press release, it indicated who was at this party. Some of them I didn't see, but Dustin Hoffman, Eddie Murphy, I spoke with, Lauren Bacall, Drew Barrymore, William Hurt, Bob Fosse. Diane Lane was there with her date, John Bon Jovi, who she had to introduce because everybody didn't know who he was.
So I say, are you Bon John Bovi? And their song had just come out on MTV, and he was wearing white leather pants. I remember that. You couldn't forget him in white leather pants. And I said, I just saw your video this week. You guys are going to be huge. And he goes, do you think? Really?
That was certainly a highlight. But also, I think we need to skip to the fact that there was someone else there, Alan, who you were excited to see. Who was that?
Okay, so JFK Jr., who I had spent years in New York City tabloids reading, he's the hottest guy, the sexiest man alive. But, what's the hype? I don't get it. Anyway, he walks past me at one point. He's about 3 feet in front of me. And I went, oh, my God.
Oh, he was like a Greek god.
Pictures don't do him justice. And I think I even said, oh, my God, audibly. And I think at this point, I've embarrassed Lisa to the point that she wants to disappear because I've just embarrassed myself so much.
Because they were there together, by the way. Lisa and Alan were there together.
I don't recall Alan's actual reaction. But knowing Alan, yes, I can imagine what it was.
Now, in my mind, he was at the next, sort of little table over there with these little sort of riser tables. And I remember him asking, do you have sweet and low? And pointing at me. And I'm thinking, yeah. I was kind of on cloud 9 at this party, as I used to joke with Lisa and you and Michael. We're the only people here who aren't famous. And I do have a picture where I'm lurking in the background of Michael talking to Richard Gere, who I was probably stalking at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sort of in the background holding a drink, looking like I have to go talk to Michael after this and ask him.
But no, my notes said he wouldn't talk to me. So I guess what he was saying to me is no comment.
Probably, but the picture captured him being intrigued by you.
Well, he happened to be a good actor there, right?
Sally. I was wearing my skinny tie and my $2 thrift shop sports jacket.
Any friend who's seen the picture calls it Alan lurking.
Now, Lisa, do you have any memories from the party?
Oddly enough, I do remember coming down the gangplank to enter the party.
Tell them why.
Alan and I were out on, he having spotted JFK Jr., we were sort of stalking him all night. And at one point, we were on the southern open side of the ship as JFK was having a fight with his girlfriend, who at the time was that Christina woman. And they'd been together for 2 or 3 years. Anyway, they were having a fight. And it was getting pretty argumentative and somewhat heated. And Alan and I kept trying to sidle closer and closer to them to see if we could hear what this was actually about. And then they saw us and walked away. But
we thought they were fighting over which one of us they wanted to sleep with.
Oh, yeah,
anyway,
right. What about your entrance? One of you told me a story about your entrance.
You remember the entrance because the entrance, I want to say, we kind of embarrassed ourselves. Do you not remember this?
We somehow got in the way of Ross's entrance, right?
Yeah. I'll make us sound ridiculous, but this is the true story. We were running about 10 minutes late. And of course, she's always late, right? So, we're not going to be late. So I remember going, Lisa, we got to go. We're going to be late. She goes, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. In our friendship, I was always thinking, we have to get there soon. And Lisa was always we're fine. And she knew.
Yeah, that's Lisa.
Lisa knew the music business that I did not. And I'm like, we got to go. So we were late. And I remember being sort of agitated. Well, the party is packed. And you can walk down this sort of gangplank and see the party's packed. And I'm like, I knew we were going to be late. And now we're trying to scope out where we're going to stand. So we're kind of slowly walking at the music blares up. Huge music. And it's swells, music, and people start applauding. And I don't know why. Maybe it was youth. But I'm looking at Lisa are they applauding for us? Wow. Who do they think we are? Wild applause. And I'm like, wow, that's so sweet that they're applauding for us. Well, I turned thinking it's probably not for us. And Diana Ross is about 5 feet behind us. The gown is and I'm like, holy shit. I look at Lisa. Lisa looks at me. We both kind of jump off the gangplank. Like, exit stage left, you go right. Like, it just instinct. We just looked at each other like, jump. And we like jumped off. It was like 2 feet off the ground. Let her have her moment. But we ruined her entrance coming into the party.
Wow, that's impressive.
You know, frankly, Alan, I have a vague memory of this, but I honestly was wondering to myself, okay, was that a party for Diana Ross or Tina Turner? I couldn't remember which.
We literally ruined her entrance, and I kept waiting for the reporting the next day to talk about these two buffoons who walked in ruining her entrance. But no, there wasn't a whole lot of reporting or press there, but we did ruin her entrance. If there's any videotape of it existing, it's us coming in and getting applause.
And meanwhile, I was over at the food table taking my intricate notes. You know, once again, I was always taking intricate notes. These two were not. They had shrimp cocktail. They had smoked salmon on rye. They had chocolate fondue with fresh fruit. My notes said the best food at a entertainment event that I've ever witnessed. But a lot of people commented later in the reporting that the tables were empty, that it was such a huge place. You know, at first they were all packed in one area, but as people spread out, there were a lot of tables. And Diana Ross herself commented and was like, where is everybody? Because people weren't sitting down to eat or whatever. While you guys were making your grand entrance, I was, of course, eating as much as I could.
What she didn't realize is she invited all these models and stuff, like the supermodels, I believe, were there. And like, if you invite supermodels don't eat. Put the food near the press area.
I was chasing all of them. I was trying to get quotes. You two were like, free party. But one interesting thing is that there was Fran Lebowitz again. After she was like very acerbic again about the Central Park concert, right. She was there. I asked her if she was at the Radio City Music Hall concert. She said, no, I was at home busy not writing. And then she looked around the boat and said, at least it's less hostile than during the war years. And Steve Rebell was there too. I guess they went to the Diana Ross party thing.
They had heard about the smoked salmon.
Maybe that's it. And then this I do remember that Diana Ross stayed till about 1:30 a.m. It's in my notes. A lot of the celebrities had left and we were dancing to her music. And we danced with her, Alan.
I gotta laugh at this one. I'm scared to go near the woman because, first of all, not only have I ruined her entrance, I'm that guy who a year ago asked those obnoxious questions. So I'm just convinced, like, she's like hates my guts. So I'm like kind of trying to hang out near Lisa and I'm trying to like get the celebrity scene. And oh, there's like this one from a TV show and this one's a big movie star. Then it's like the divas in the room, you know, the Motown people, the divas. And you're just like, I don't know where to look. I don't think we got half the names of the celebrities who were there. This party is wild. And I'm just like, this is amazing. This is so much fun. But they're all dancing on the dance floor. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to just hang back. Our colleague, David Hutchings, was fearless. He would say and do anything at any time. He goes over and he says, hey, come on, I want to introduce you to Diana. I said, no, we're not doing that. He goes, come on, let's go over. There's a picture of me, like, with my hand extended like this, and Diana Ross, like, meeting me and smiling, and me looking like, I'm a kid from Queens. What the hell? And he goes, let's all dance. We went out to the dance floor, and I danced with Diana Ross for about 10 minutes.
Whoa!
Yeah, me too.
And I remember thinking, like, no one will ever believe this. I don't believe this. And I'm just like, and this is before cell phones and cameras and everything.
She really liked dancing with David Hutchings, which made me kind of mad because, Sally, you remember my excellent dance moves from high school.
Oh, yeah.
I was using all of those.
Who is David Hutchings?
He was another reporter for People magazine who we all loved, and he made everything more fun, including getting us to dance with Diana Ross. It was quite a night. This brings us to the point where we have to look at the things I saved and decide what to do with them. I need to go through these relatively thin folders, which were not taking up so much space, which would help me argue that I need to keep them. It says Diana Ross on the front, and on the back it says, Lisa, this is the Ross folder. Lisa, who I think must have been fact-checking the story.
Must have been.
In case you didn't get that it said Diana Ross on the front, I gave you a special note so you wouldn't miss it. Inside, we find a People letters report. People magazine, every week we got a letters report of who wrote in. In this case, we got 81 letters about the Diana Ross Central Park concert. And I saved this, and I think there's good reason to save it. Look at her face. Lisa, why are you making that face?
Mike, why are you saving a letters report from what year was this? 1980-something?
83.
83. This is absurd. Why? What are your plans for this? You're going to save it and do what with it? Make a podcast out of it, obviously. After you make a podcast out of it, Really, just recycle it, shred it, give it back to the earth. Because a letters report from 1983, you know, you only have to keep your taxes for 7 years. You shouldn't keep this shit longer than that. So, toss it.
I feel like it's historical. It has historical value.
In what possible way does a letters report from 1983 have historical value to anyone but you?
Well, we know how people reacted to Diana Ross and her concert and her disaster, which we might not remember. It's these little things. When you're writing a history book, it's so boring to say Napoleon went here and there, but it's really interesting to say someone in Napoleon's army had beef stew for dinner.
Okay, well, Napoleon famously said that an army marches on its stomach, so the beef stew would be good. But no one is going to care about how People magazine readers reacted. An historian would look at the story itself. They're not going to look at the letters report.
There's a very excellent comment here that says, "Thank you, Michael Small and staff." And staff means the two of you, by the way, for once again giving credit where credit was due. A very fine article. That's from Larry in Nashville, Tennessee.
Thank you, Larry.
And then we did say a lot about all the conflict behind the scenes, and we have this, why the bitchy article about Diana? She is an extremely talented woman who shares her God-given talent with us all. Of course, every gesture and word were calculated. She is a professional performer, after all. Perhaps you could deem her worthy of praise if she appeared on an empty stage, dressed in polyester, lip-synced her records, and separated her audience according to race.
My mom wrote.
And what's wrong with Diana being a shrewd businesswoman? It was quite shrewd of yourselves to slap Diana on the cover to sell your magazine and then tear her apart in the article. So Deborah wrote us that. She was not happy with us.
I don't remember those being very mean. I thought they were very nice, frankly.
I can read you probably what she objected to, because I have the article, of course, right here. It says, 2 melodramatic evenings of music and chaos, sun and lightning, selfishness and compassion, affection and violence, triumph and despair. And here's the cover with Diana singing on the cover. I didn't write a lot of cover stories. This was a cover story that I wrote. Although I do have to say, Lisa, you'll be glad to know I saved my original version of the story, which I can compare with the final story. Do you have any reaction to that?
Well, every writer has a reaction to editors. So for that reason alone, I could see you as the writer of the story. You would save that just to see what the editing process was like.
Let's just say that the second half resembles my version a lot. The first half had some finesse from an editor.
That was extremely common in the earlier days of People. I mean, you know, there was a whole lot of rewriting.
I think this is wonderful evidence of how things get edited. And then I have, Lisa, you'll be glad to see this. I did have a press pass for the second day. So I have my press pass. Now, isn't that cool memorabilia that people would find valuable?
No, I would not have saved this one.
And then, of course, don't forget the cassette of Andy Warhol, Fran Lebowitz, and Steve Rubell. That's history right there.
Oh, yes.
I assume that Fran is still going strong, along with her amazing wit. But 6 years after our phone call, Steve died of complications from AIDS. He was 45. And just 4 years after our call, Andy died after having gallbladder surgery. He was 58. To hear their voices on this tape, when we had no idea what was ahead, that seems very valuable to me. So I do not want to throw this out.
Well, the cassettes are sort of different for me. I actually do have a box of old interviews that I've saved. When I start the Swedish death cleaning, I honestly don't know if I'll bother to keep them.
Okay, I know what's going to happen. You're going to send the box to me. I'm going to digitize them. I have a machine for that. And you are going to do several episodes of I Couldn't Throw It Out.
No, I'm not going to do that.
I'm team save. I'm a memorabilia collector too. I have stuff from 30 years ago, people I met and things. Just because at some point I'm going to look back on those things and look and say, oh, I remember that. I went to that party. I was at that thing.
That's what we did today, Alan.
Sometimes the memories, like I would have gone to my grave saying that the Wilding was the first night.
Yeah. America would have suffered for you to go to your grave like that. Now, meanwhile, here's the Bobby Zarin press release. Diana Ross's gala opening night concert, kicking off her record-breaking engagement at Radio City Music Hall, to be attended by film, music, theater, television, and literary celebrities. Well, maybe this should be thrown out because the very last guest listed under the celebrity guests was a pseudo-celebrity at the time. Underneath Lee Radziwill and Betty Comden, Donald Trump was at that party.
You know what, Michael? These are time capsules, and I think you have to save that stuff because it's like even now, when would we have a concert of a famous entertainer and mention the audience's racial composition? We wouldn't. It's not the kind of thing that we even think about at this point, really.
And when would Sandy Dennis be listed above Donald Trump? Okay.
In my book, every day of the week.
Okay, so we had Elisa toss it all. We had an Alan save it all. Sally, where are you at?
Boy, I'm usually a toss it, but I say keep it because it might sell on eBay someday.
I like how you're thinking. And these objects brought us back together with Lisa and Alan. They were my posse when we were at People Magazine.
That's where Donald Trump came up with grab him by the posse. Sorry, I had to.
I love the fact that someone is out punning Sally because that needs to happen more often.
Sally and I are kindred pun spirits.
Absolutely. But I just want to say to Alan and Lisa, I hope that someday we'll be together again.
I guess that is the final word for these Diana treasures and for our Diana memories. Thank you again, Alan and Lisa.
My pleasure.
For easing on down memory lane with us.
I don't get to hang out with you guys enough, so that was great.
It was interesting to go back decades to when journalism was still fun.
Before we sign off, a reminder to everyone that you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Or you can listen on our website at throwitoutpodcast.com. And you can get a reminder about our latest episodes on Instagram at throwitoutpod.
If we whetted your interest in Diana Ross's very wet Central Park concert, you can relive both concerts in the movie version called Diana Ross Live in Central Park, which is rentable on Amazon Prime Video for $20. And for those of you who really want to see that photo of Alan lurking behind me and Richard Gere, I've posted it on our website, along with photos of all the treasures that I saved and Lisa wanted me to throw out. You can see it all at throwitoutpodcast.com. And that does it for another episode of
I Couldn't Throw It Out. Bye.
Bye.
Look up that stairway to my big attic. Am I a hoarder or am I a fanatic? Decades of stories, memories stacked. There is a redolence of some irrelevant facts. Oh, I couldn't throw it out. I had to scream and shout. It all seems so unjust, but still I know I must. Before I turn to dust, I've got to throw it out. Before I turn to dust, I've got to throw it out. Well, I couldn't throw it out. Oh, I couldn't throw it out. I'll sort through my possessions in these painful sessions. I guess this is what it's about. The poems, cards, and papers, the moldy, musty vapors. I just